You guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. In my video that I did about jumping in your 40s, I said I would do some how-to videos. So I'm here today with my buddy Teddy, and I'll introduce him in a minute. But what we're gonna do is talk about a series of very simple things that you can do in the parking lot while you're waiting for your buddies for the ride that are gonna give you bike control. And these things will eventually translate to controlling your bike and getting ready to hit those drops and to hit those jumps. This will be a series of videos that will start from super beginner and hopefully get people ready to hit the jumps. Hey, so let me introduce you guys to my buddy Teddy Parker, who is a shredder himself.
Hi, Teddy Parker. Been BMXing most of my life, so a little over 30 years now. Used to work in the industry, work at like Camp Woodward, and I've been taking up mountain biking for the past 5 years. So although I do have the cliche BMX background, I am going through a lot of the same struggles applying it to a bigger bike, and that's going to help us explain some of the things you might do on a BMX bike and translate it to mountain biking on the trail.
Neither Teddy or I are mountain bike coaches, but we're going to talk about things that we have done that have helped us gain confidence on the trail and hitting those jumps as well. So let's get into it. A track stand is bringing your bike to a stop or near stop and simply balancing on the bike while it's not moving. You do this by modulating your brakes, using your knees and your hips to go forward and backward, side to side, to be able to balance on the bike. Generally, you want to have your front wheel at an angle, and if you find the sweet spot, you can almost just sit still and not really move much. But if you start to lose that sweet spot, then you'll have to use your knees, your hips, and your brakes, like I mentioned, to stay upright and not have to step down. Now, this technique is going to be useful in the future just by helping you become comfortable with being on your bike and not necessarily being in the same position all the time. It'll help you with technical terrain when you're going through rocks and other things, and you may not be going as fast, but it'll give you bike control and brake control through those areas. It also helps a ton when you're about to drop into something and you can kind of get on both your pedals on your brakes and drop in without having to lose those few seconds to try to find your positioning on your pedals. Have fun with this one. It's easy to do, challenge your friends. Slowly but surely, your bike control will get better. Another variation of this is when your bike comes to a stop, simply using the bouncing method to avoid stepping down. Your brakes are on and you're just bouncing up and down on your bike to keep your balance, to reposition, and this is going to be helpful. And we're going to combine this together with the track stand and some other techniques in a bit. Okay, next up are going to be curb drops. I love curbs because you can do so much with them. And in this exercise, we are going to be practicing front wheel bias drops where we're almost pushing off the curb and making sure that our front tire touches first. We're going to be doing rear wheel bias drops where we are pulling up just before the curb and making sure that our rear wheel touches first. And then also we're going to be practicing a very tiny manual off of the curb so that we ensure that both tires land at the same time. Okay, so these techniques are going to be super helpful when you are getting ready to hit small drops and also jumps. It's going to help you with jumps by timing the lip. So if you can imagine that curb as your lip, and when you need to start pulling up or pushing off of it, if you want to squash something, and then also with drops, because again, this is actually a small drop. And so it's just helping us with the timing, with body position, and also how we approach different drops. For example, if we're going to be dropping onto a sloped downhill landing, that's when we want to use a front wheel bias drop versus, something that's more flat. Then we want to use a rear wheel bias or even two wheel bias drops. Once you're pretty comfortable with track stands, with curb drops, and also with a hopping technique, we can combine all three. So in this exercise, Teddy and I are just going to be rolling up to the edge of the curb and kind of stopping right before the curb and using a combination of track stands and hops to reposition ourselves before we drop in. Again, this is going to be just practicing bike control, brake control, and also controlling the position of the bike as you're about to drop into that feature.
That was perfect.
Notice here how Teddy has come to a stop, and now he's using his brakes and the hopping method to kind of even go back a little bit and kind of reposition himself before he drops in. Same thing here. I've come to a stop. I'm kind of just hopping around, hop back a little bit, give me some room, and then drop in. Okay, next up is bike body separation and leaning the bike to get ready to do those flat turns on the trail. One of the things that is very detrimental to successful jumping is losing speed as you're coming up to the jump. And one of the areas where you lose the most speed is in berms because we're afraid to rail that berm and we're afraid to slide out. And so we really slow down. So one thing that you can practice to help you with turns, especially flat turns, is doing these bike leans where you are keeping your body weight over the bottom bracket of your bike while you lean your bike and let it turn, and ensuring that you have proper grip on the tires because your body is over the bike and not leaned over with the bike. Now this is a little bit different than when you're hitting a berm because the berm is there to kind of catch you and you can lean a little bit more with the bike versus having to separate yourself from the bike when you're doing a flat turn.
So just to clarify, the next stuff we're doing, dynamic riding, this isn't a make or break on features. This is just going to be stuff you're doing in the parking lot, at the trailhead, or even on flat bits of trail to stay loose. So this isn't critical technique for features, more based on fun, but practical fun as well.
All right, the first of these exercises is a simple double front wheel lift where you're lifting your front wheel, placing it on something like a curb, and then using the rebound of that contact to do a higher lift off of it. This will come in handy with technical climbing, and also for those that don't know how to bunny hop yet, this is definitely a first step towards learning how to eventually bunny hop. And here we have a nose bonk drop. This exercise is fun, it looks cool, and it also helps you shifting your weight with your hips at the rear of the bike. This can come in handy when your front wheel clears a feature and your back wheel has not. Learning how to weight the front of the bike to be able to lift the back of the bike is a really helpful skill just for bike control, and also gives you more practice with lifting the rear wheel instead of the front wheel, like with wheelies and manuals and everything else that people usually focus on. All right, next up is the classic bunny hop, and I'm not talking about a clipped in two-wheel hop. I'm talking about a proper lift the front wheel and then the back wheel to follow bunny hop. Practice doing this onto a curb, and then I like to kind of roll right off it with a manual afterwards, just because it gives you practice anticipating multiple features and multiple skills, one right after another. So just like with the double front wheel lift, the key here is to use your suspension. You see us pushing down into our suspension and using that rebound to pull the front tire up and keep weight down through your pedals until your front tire's up around your chest, and then you pull up the back. By pushing the bike forward now, bars away from your chest, and scooping with your pedals to bring up the back. This little trick has saved me many times when I was about to case a jump, and I do this exact same thing in the air to get right up and over that landing. Manuals. Honestly, it would take a whole nother video to talk about proper technique, and I can't properly manual yet. So here, what we want to focus on is just a solid front wheel lift. Start small, choose a target, and see if you can keep your wheel sustained for that amount of time. Remember to compress your suspension and use that rebound to bring the front wheel up, lean back and find a balance point, and try to hit your target. And then just make it longer and longer. All right, let's see those back wheels in the air. Use your front brake and lean forward to bring that back tire back. Take it even to the extreme and see how far it will take for you to actually go too far so that you know where that limit is. But practice this, see if you can go up and do different variations of it. take your feet off the pedals or give it a pedal. Um, Try to pedal away from this, whether you do a fakie or whether you end up just stopping, going back, and then going forward again.
I didn't let go of my rear brake, so I went to pedal. I was like, wait,
You're like, it's not going.
my drivetrain don't work.
But what you can eventually start to do is pivot a little bit. So as your rear wheel is in the air, you can use your body, your hips to rotate the bike, and then use the back brake to rotate the front. And it's a really cool way to just kind of turn around on the trail when you're sessioning things, and gives you excellent bike control with your brakes. All right, you guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank Teddy. A huge deal. If you're just starting out and you want to eventually work up to jumps, practice these simple and easy things. You don't have to take extra time out of your day. Just when you get to the trailhead and you're waiting for somebody, just get on your bike and hop around and mess around. Get that bike control down. It's going to pay you huge dividends later on. So keep your eye out for the next video, which will just be a next step up in the progression, and eventually we'll be hitting some jumps. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.